did you understand what type of vampire movie this was? Because I'll be honest with you, yeah. It's not that I was confused. It just felt like it didn't really have an identity when it comes to, because usually with vampire movies, there's like a specific niche, right? This one didn't feel like, it felt like it was a bit mixed because I was getting like, for example, the main vampire, right? Barlow. I was getting like Nosferatu vibes from him. But at the same time, they're like Nosferatu vibes mixed with a bit of, like that American town, like the modern day. It was missing a presence, like a vampire presence that you usually get from other movies than this movie. It just felt like he was put there to spread a virus, to turn other people into vampires.
So the point of Salem's Lot is to essentially be a reconstruction of vampires. So it's the whole idea of it's essentially Dracula. So Dracula is essentially about vampire moves to London, starts taking over London, right? Starts terrorizing people, starts feeding off people. And the idea is essentially to take that into the modern day, into a small town in Maine, because all Stephen King stories are set in Maine, right? So that's the whole idea. Like you take the vampire and take its classical tropes completely straight, and then you put them into the modern day, and then you watch them win. That's the idea. That's what the story is about. And I think on that level, so I read the book like 10 years ago, and I remember really liking it. But I didn't remember too many of the specific plot points, or like I'm not hugely invested in the story or anything. So I said, hey, I'm up for some vampire stuff, and I like monstrous vampires. And I vaguely remember that the vampires win in the end by this one, so that should be interesting. And then none of that really happened. Like I think the one good thing about this is the vampire designs. Like every time we just saw the vampires, I was totally on board for it. Right? Like I think one of my favorite shots is when they go to, I think it's Mark's parents, right? And they realize that there's like two vampires just standing on the roof and just watching, and then kind of just keep driving, right? Or when Mark is in the treehouse and all his friends have been turned into vampires, and they're kind of clawing at the outside of the treehouse, and then you zoom out and there's like 20 of them, and you see the glowing eyes and like just surrounding the treehouse. Stuff like that is really cool. So every time there was a vampire on screen, and every time they did something, I was really on board.
Barlow's design, because I think you guys are a little bit more into some of the vampire stuff than I am, and to me, like, looked significantly different to kind of like seeing a Dracula in a movie, in whatever movie I've seen him in. But in terms of like this interpretation and this kind of take on like the vampire design, is that kind of like common in like other stories, or was this maybe something you liked, or a bit of a misstep for Barlow's design?
So this is very much the pre-Twilight stuff, right? Where they are walking corpses that hypnotize people, and they have to be invited inside and stuff like that, right? So this is very much classical vampires, and it is played very straight. I don't think they bring up garlic or any of that stuff, but there's holy water, there's crucifixes, all of that stuff is just played completely straight. And I think it's like these are proper vampires in that sense.
So, question. I can agree as well. I did like the design of the vampires. That was probably one of the I don't even want to say this one, but one of the very few positive things about the movie.
My best thing absolutely was the vampires. Just the fact that they were allowed to be monstrous and that they were allowed to be creepy and magical. Like they're like a lot of vampires are either like the Twilight type, so not monsters, kind of romanticized, or they are kind of like the scientific vampires where it's like a virus or something like that. And this was just magic vampires. Like they had to be invited in, and they like crosses worked against them and stuff like that, right? So I kind of like that throwback. So that combination of being magic and being like classical monster, like proper monsters, that really worked for me. And I kept wishing like that was the movie.
Because I know obviously there's garlic, there's the crosses, but I never knew that you had to let a vampire in. So was that like a theology which was created?
That's like the classical folklore. That's the classical folklore of vampires. Like vampires are basically social predators, right? They manipulate you into being their victim, and they have all the trappings of sophistication and youth and wealth and all of those things. And but underneath is a wild animal, right? Like something that will like tear you apart if you let it. And part of that social predation is that they have to get you to invite them in. As long as you are behind closed doors and you don't fall for their lies, you're okay. right? That's where you're safe. But they will try to find a way to get you to invite them in, and once you do, they can enter your home, and then it's over. And that ties again into that idea of vigilance, right? That if you just pay attention to your surroundings and like you're on the ball, then they're not that strong. But if you let down your guard and if you kind of don't pay attention, that's where they get you.